Yep.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Faith and Finance Forum, hosted by the Catholic Finance Association and presented by Aquinas Wealth Advisors. We're back after a quick month since our last episode. We're so delighted to have our friend from Checkwriters, Dakota Hebert. Am I pronouncing that right, Dakota?
I guess it depends where you're from, but we say Hebert in New England.
Hebert, thank you, thank you. I think there was a great football player named Hebert that I'm recalling, but I can't remember his first name. But Hebert, we will say.
Yeah.
Dakota
Thank you.
Hebert is with us. Dakota, you are at Checkwriters. I believe you're the chief marketing officer. Do I have that right?
That's right. Thank you.
Well, we're going to talk about faith and family and business with Dakota today. Checkwriters is a absolutely outstanding family-owned company that has a lot going on. Not only are they top in their professional field, but they also have a really rich history and heritage and identity that we're going to get into with Dakota. So very excited for this conversation. Let's get started with a prayer, shall we? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Pope St. John Paul II, pray for us.
Amen.
Holy Ghost, amen. Well, Dakota, this is delightful. I mean, I've really enjoyed our acquaintanceship over the past few years. You definitely have what my old boss Tom Monahan would call the fire in the belly. You're passionate about your work and check writers and everything else you're involved in. Why don't we just start with getting to know you a little bit? Tell me about where you grew up, what your early life was like, anything you'd like to share with our audience.
Sure. Thanks, John. I appreciate being a guest on your podcast. I've followed it pretty closely over the past couple of years since we first came to your DFMC conference, and it's been great. And I appreciate your having us on. Yeah. So as far as me, well, people often ask when I started working at Checkwriters, and I say since the day I was born because my parents started it actually the same year I was born,
Great.
back in 1988, 89, maybe shortly after I was born. But all in all, I was a baby when they first when they first got the company going. So I've always been involved at some point, which I think has been, I'll say I call it a competitive advantage actually to
Yeah.
be that involved from a company at that early of an age. But we are based in New England, and that's where I'm based also. So I grew up in Western Massachusetts, which is kind of the forgotten part of Massachusetts when as far as Boston is concerned. But we're not too far. We're about an hour and a half from Boston. Um, Grew up in a town called South Hadley, Massachusetts. I'm one of four. I'm the oldest of four siblings, three boys, and my sister is the youngest. And yeah, growing up, it was we talked about business a lot. We were involved in the company a lot, just because anyone who's grown up in a family business, it's very hard to separate the two for better or worse. But usually for us, it was for the better. My parents talked about it over the dinner table, so we were always exposed to it from a very early age, which I really enjoyed. And then yeah, that's my childhood. As far as right now, um, my wife Molly and I have six kids, ages 4 months to 11. I like to give a range because I don't want to get anybody's age or grade wrong because it's pretty hard with that with that many sometimes for me anyway. I'm not the best with birthdays, but yeah, that's kind of a rough overview.
Wow, I love it. So literally, the business is intertwined with your personal story. I want to unpack that a lot, but one thing I'm dying to ask you is, I mean, was there ever a point where you considered doing something other than working for check writers, or was this always kind of like where you saw yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think about that a lot now that I'm older. I'm 37, and there was a time. There were many times, not so much nowadays. Now that once you have a family, your perspective changes. I'm sure you'd agree with that. A lot of people
Yes.
have talked about that before, but um, I would say when a lot of people start getting restless and kind of that college phase and immediately after, I did think about a lot of things that I might want to do. I love history. I love politics. That's what I studied at college. I went to Salve Regina University in Newport. That's actually where I met my wife. We were both politics majors. So, I had the political bug a little bit. I worked on a couple campaigns right out of college and worked in DC for a few years. I think in the back of my mind, maybe it was somewhere in my gut, I don't know, but I knew that I won't say destined. That sounds a little bit lofty for this conversation, but it was more like if growing up in a family business, you have a sense that it's your responsibility. It's more around responsibility and duty,
Yeah.
from what I think. And so yeah, I did a few other things, and I would have conversations with my dad all the time.
Mm,
He did want us to, all of us kids. So my actually all of us in some capacity. I know my brother Jake. He's on our sales
yes.
team here at Checkwriters. So all of us in some capacity do work for the company, and I think that's something that my parents always that would that's one of the reasons they built the company. To have a strong family and coupled with a strong business influencing each other. But there yeah, to go back to the question, there was a time where I thought of it, but I always felt kind of drawn to the company, to work at this company. And I do think that can be harder in our society. I do think that there's this strain, which is a good thing because that's how you have great businesses founded, of setting off on your own and pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, and the like idea of like go west young man, like that type of
Yeah.
thing. That's a good thing. That's the probably the spark that drove my parents to found the business. But that's not always a good thing for the next generation to think, because you need a succession plan if you want the company to continue. So that's how I kind of think of it. There can be an idea of, if you're just going to work for your dad, like it's somehow considered a
Mm,
lesser calling. But for me, I got over that pretty quickly, I guess,
yeah.
because it was, there are easier things about working for a family business, but there's definitely not easy things too.
Yeah. Yeah.
There can be, everybody has disagreements. I mean, we have good disagreements, I think, productive ones all the time. We talk about it all the time. It's funny. We were interviewing somebody for a team lead position earlier this week on our support team. And he was talking about how a lot of the people who he'd be managing on that team are actually his friends. And he said, so I don't know. I mean, if I get it and they don't, or if we have disagreements, how I wonder how that will affect our friendship. And I said, well,
Mm,
listen, if I've been doing it for a long time, and my brother's still my brother, and my dad is still my dad, and my sister-in-law actually works for us also. So there's good things and there's bad things about a family business, but for me, it's always been just something that there in the best way possible. There was no other choice.
that's fascinating. And
Yeah.
what you just mentioned is really intriguing to me too. Like, because I have not worked in a family business like you grew up in Dakota, but I would think that one of the things that would be a little tricky would be navigating the relationship between somebody who, is your, I guess your supervisor, your manager in the family company, or conversely, somebody that you're supervising or managing, or even a lateral team member, kind of creating that delineation between, hey, this is an aspect of our relationship that is, business, focused versus like, when the family birthday party is that weekend, or
Yeah.
who's struggling, recovering from medical condition, or going, how you're getting to mass on Sunday, whatever. How do you guys deal with that where it's like, this is a business aspect of our relationship, not necessarily the family aspect. We talk a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. My first impression of that question is that for better or worse, we really don't separate those things too
Fascinating.
much. I mean, one thing that I'm thinking of as you're saying that, I mean, we have had we my youngest was baptized just a couple weeks ago, and we gathered in the cafe area of Check Writers headquarters afterward. with some food and a cake and our priest. So it's really funny that as you were saying that, that was the first thing I thought about, because you said getting the mass, and it's like um it there's a lot of integration there. Let's just say that. And we've even had like Easter dinner in the headquarters, because it's just like a very large cafe place, and it's a good gathering spot, centrally located for all the people who be invited. But maybe what you were also getting at was, how do you prioritize?
Yes.
Is that, yeah.
Yes.
So the good thing is, and I think this is common with a lot of family businesses, is that they're very family friendly.
Mm.
And growing up, I can say that I never thought, are my parents going to be at my ski race, for example, or are we not going to be able to have a weekend with our family, or things like that? Because we always did. I mean, that was one great thing. My parents built the business both for their family, but also with their family.
Mm.
Growing up, I would be, sitting on my mom's lap as, a very young toddler as she processed those early payrolls. There's a picture of me going on sales calls with my dad when I was like 5 or 6 years old.
Love it.
And yeah, and so there was never sort of this sense of like, this is work, kids. You can't come with us, or you can't be involved, or it's adults only. It was always very much integrated. And that's what I really love that now, because I have that flexibility with my own young family. There's never this idea of like, it's not like a drill sergeant mentality, although my dad was a sergeant in the 82nd Airborne.
Wow.
He doesn't really,
Yeah.
um, but we're very family friendly as a company, and we've got a lot of staff here with young kids. And there's seems like there's very often babies coming along. Actually, one of our top guys on our support team just had a baby a couple months ago.
Wow.
So that's kind of my thought around that question.
What a cool culture to be a part of. I
Yeah,
mean, just the comfort you're describing with family life and with children and the 5-year-old going in the sales call. I mean, that is a special and unique culture. I don't think you get that in a lot of, perhaps larger companies, Fortune 500 corporations, where, you tell the division VP like, "Hey, I'm going to bring my 5-year-old on the next sales call." I mean, or into the office or whatever. I don't think that that's I think that's kind of rare in fact, and I think that's a real blessing to work at a company like Checkwriters. That's awesome. You mentioned your father a little bit, the 82nd Airborne Sergeant. What a what an awesome
yeah,
story that must be.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your parents, the founders of Checkwriters. A little bit about their stories, what they did before founding the company, and just the life experiences that prepared them to create this beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad, like this is a very common story that you hear from founders. Um, he founded several businesses, and in his early days, and the first one he talks about is that his dad had a big garden in his backyard. This old French Canadian guy who was always out there growing grapes and rhubarb and strawberries and all that. And my dad would wheel the strawberry cart around, selling it around the neighborhood. He loved the idea of starting and owning a business. He did that, and uh, he there was another business he founded with my mom. This was their first business, which I wonder like what our life would be like if this one took off, because it's such a funny idea. But it was called Tasty Teddies, and it was a can of jelly beans with a little stuffed teddy bear glued on top. And
Love it.
they sold those all over the place, and the business was actually doing okay. Um, he said the margins weren't great, but he even they were actually sold in downtown New York City, actually at the World Trade Center, in a little gift
Wow.
shop. So it's just funny to think about the type of businesses that they started in those early days. But there was always a willingness to risk, because that's the big thing,
Love
right?
that.
Is and that's really what they did. They risked whatever they had in those early days, which wasn't a ton. And neither of my parents went to school, went to college. I mean, they went to high school, obviously, but it's a typical founder type of story where you hear of this just drive to start a business and to have kind of control over your own destiny in that realm. And they ended up they heard about this payroll thing. They started a franchise first of a national payroll company that's no longer around. But that's really how they got their feet wet. And they built the business, as they say, the old-fashioned way. I mean, we started out as a local payroll provider in Springfield, Massachusetts. And back then, there wasn't electronic payroll, strictly speaking, or like digital um, management of your finances as we understand it today. It was very much like you chose a local provider and the checks were hand delivered by a courier. Back then it was my dad, but well, he did everything except that my mom did the operations and he did the marketing, sales, and courier service and all that. But yeah, it grew very organically, and it grew through trust and relationship and handshakes and all of that sort of thing. And that's what we try to retain with everything that we do today, even though we're a national company. I think that the service and the trust and the relationship is still very much a local one, even if, you're a diocese halfway across the country. But that's really what we try to communicate to our clients.
Yeah, I love it. So in the beginning, it's just your mom and dad kind of putting this together at the kitchen
Oh
table,
yeah.
huh?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, absolutely. And they had, a great thing is the people too, because that's a key part of it is the relationships that they had with their early employees,
Mm,
that we now have with our next generation of employees now.
mm.
But there's our executive vice president, Pete Whalen, recently retired last year, and he started working for free for my parents. He
Wow.
was one of their very first employees, and he was one of their very early clients. And he said, "Hey, you know what? I feel like I can sell this with you guys. I
Wow.
love what you're doing. I love the differentiator over some of these, more faceless national competitors." And he was with them through 35 plus years. So it's a great thing, and that's been one of the most significant success factors of this company is the ability to attract people who are like-minded and want to
Yes.
build something with you. So that's been a great thing to see too.
Yeah, I mean, what a gesture to say, hey, I believe so much in you as people and also your vision for this company that I want to come work for you for free. I mean, like
Uh,
that is very remarkable. Well, will
his
you do
wife wasn't too happy, but she's
yeah,
happy
yeah.
now. Yeah.
That would be a tough conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit more about those early days. I mean, so your parents are doing it. Employee number one comes on, willing to work for free. What were those early years of getting this thing going like? What were the challenges and the achievements of that era?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, again, I'll call this my competitive advantage of having like a firsthand account of the growth, because I literally some of my earliest memories as a kid are being down, because Checkwriters was founded. Actually, my parents owned a three-family house in the Forest Park neighborhood of Springfield, Massachusetts, and Checkwriters was on the first floor, and we lived on the second floor, and then we rented out the third. And so I was either on the second floor. My mom wouldn't want me to say that I was sometimes by myself, but maybe I was once in a while
Yeah,
as
yeah.
as a toddler. But I was often, I could always wander downstairs and be there. But it was a very exciting atmosphere in the early days. Like
Yeah.
it was a growing company. Like you hear about the early days of other companies that everybody knows, like Amazon, for example. Like the early days are always like there's a lot of passion and excitement around growing a company because you're in kind of like uncharted territory, and like the sky's the limit for where you can go and where you can grow. But there's also a lot of struggles. I mean, a lot of the things, as I mentioned, back in the early 90s were very manual. I mean, payroll was a very manual process. Right now we have so many things. We have, way more employees, but they work with, automated tools and technology and different things that make it a lot different of an industry. Um, but back then you had things like, you know, 1,000 employee company getting the checks getting printed and the printer has a problem. Or
Mm.
you have things like snowstorms and you need to go out in the snowstorm and deliver the checks so that the people can cash their checks. I mean, what a lot of people didn't use direct deposit. Um, so it was just a different thing, but it was I get again, I think the word I would use was it was still exciting for my parents, and it was something that they were building together
Yeah.
with their family with them. So it was a great thing to witness.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it must have just been incredible. So, you know, I'll, for people that haven't, you know, done what your parents did or done it as successfully, what was their lifestyle like when they were getting check writers going? Because they were parents, they were community members. Of course, they were active in their church and surely
Mhm.
charities and stuff like that while building this company from scratch. I mean, just describe like kind of like a typical day you think for your mom or dad when they were just getting this thing going.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that I think about is they were an exceptional and still are an exceptional team
Yeah.
with that because, of course, as you say, there's so many things to balance, especially when you have a young family. And there were times where it was like my mom was with us all the time because my dad had to focus on a lot of the sales and marketing. And then if there were times where the sales and marketing was at a good place, my dad would be with us a lot more. I remember there was one summer when we were growing up where there were a lot of operational things around like our tax department and our service department, bringing on new clients. My mom spearheaded all of that in the early days. And because there were several months period where it was so busy, my dad was kind of like the stay-at-home dad for us. And my
Yeah.
mom was kind of the key leader at the company for that time period. So, he brought us on like day trips all that summer and things like that. So that's the one thing I think about. Like they were an exceptional team, which is, I mean, that's you need that more than anything
Yeah.
in the early days of a company. And the and I can think back and kind of pinpoint, as I got to maybe late middle school and high school, they had succeeded in a way that the company could run itself. They had great
Mm.
people in place. They had key people in place. And so those days were great also because there was such flexibility that we had as a family, and that they were also able to extend, of course, to their employees and that integral team that they had built. And then, like many family companies, you reach a point where you say, okay, we can keep it as it is, or we can make a decision to grow and take it to the next level and take this story national. And so that's kind of that's another conversation, but that's where we went. But that's kind of like an overview of those early days of the company and our family life.
Let's explore that a little bit because there must have been this like really you know really significant moment where check writers went from being a local regional company to a truly national company like it is today, a rather large company. When did that take place? What point in the history of the company did you make that leap?
Sure. So as payroll and human resources software really started to take off is when my dad made a decision to hire a software development team. And that started with just one guy who's still with us today, a great guy named Steve Sostrom. and he's still on our development team today. But he hired him and he said, look, we can either continue as a local company and just providing service to local companies and have that more, you know, I'll say that there would be more of a manual process, not so much software involved. But he said we want to keep growing, and I think he was at a point where he said, the company is very successful, but I've got 4 kids, and there's employees here who are young too, who rely on this company and uh, to support their families. And he made the decision to continue growing the company, and it started with developing our own software, because you can license software, but then you don't have full control of it. Of course, you're at the mercy of another provider or another vendor. And that's really when it took off. So that was a big component of it. But then you also have to make a decision. How are we going to really take the successful story that has resonated so well with a local market, with people who are familiar, because you can say, they say, oh, I want to prospect this manufacturing firm. Okay, I'm going to go there. Well, where are you based? Oh, we're, in Springfield, 10 minutes from you. If you have a payroll emergency, you can come pick up the checks. That's a different story than trying to talk to a manufacturing firm in Virginia, for
Mm,
example. And so that was an interesting thing, but we had some great people come on board. Our sales manager, who came on board around that time, was very willing to kind of I'll call it jump on the Zoom train,
yeah.
before Zoom was like everything. Like, we're on Zoom now, and like everybody uses Zoom now. But when he started doing demos for prospects beyond our geographical home base, I suppose. It was a very new thing, and it was a kind of an experiment, I would say. So we did that, and the way we were able to maintain that trust, that relationship, that local feel to our service, which is so important because it really was the differentiator, was by attending conferences and trade shows and joining associations
Mm,
that valued that face-to-face interaction, that
mm,
valued that handshake, that wanted to meet the people who would be responsible for something like payroll, which is,
mm,
this it's a very significant thing. When you're responsible for payroll, you're responsible for the pay of the people who are working for you, by extension, their families, their
yeah.
bills, all those things. You want to make sure it's accurate, and you want to trust the people who are going to be helping you make that happen. And that was a huge thing. And to bring it full circle, that's how we met you, John, of course, is at the Diocesan Fiscal Management Conference, which is a way for us to meet people in person who are going to be making these decisions. And that's a huge thing that can be lost when you're a technology company, and can be lost when you're selling a technology product. I always say, like, we sell technology, but what we really do is service.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll never forget our first meeting, Dakota, because it was just really striking to me. You had generously sponsored the conference, and you certainly were representing Checkwriters, with great vigor and energy, meeting a lot of people, sharing a lot of information about your company. But I'll never forget, kind of when you felt you had gotten all that done, you and your team just, kind of took off on your scooters and explored the town and enjoyed some fellowship together. I liked
That's right.
that clearly kind of like relaxed, not taking yourself too seriously, just joyful like culture that I encountered with you guys. That does seem to be part of what Checkwriters is all about, right? I mean, you guys work extremely hard, you achieve great results, but there's also kind of like this peace and this comfort and this joy in each other that you guys share. Would you agree with that? Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a funny anecdote. I think somebody on that scooter ride had a very slight injury, I think, but that was okay. I think it was Tracy, our customer success manager.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was in Denver, right? That first
Yes,
one.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was good. Yes, absolutely. So there's a great sense of camaraderie. I always find that for whatever reason, well, I think there can be many reasons, but from family businesses and privately held organizations that I'm familiar with, there's always a great sense of camaraderie. I think it comes from that family friendliness. I think it comes from kind of like being through I mean maybe like the term could be like battle tested for
Yeah.
things. So that is great. And I'll take the opportunity with this question to kind of go and expand a little bit on why I think family organizations, and in particular ones with founders who really value their teams, they my dad has always been very generous, not just from the perspective of pay and time off and things like that, but he's always wanted to create a beautiful and comfortable place for people to work and and create a beautiful environment for them to be in. And that's always been a very important thing to him. And that's why I think it's 2025, maybe five or 6 years ago, we moved into a much larger headquarters than we had previously, a 30,000 square foot headquarters in Northampton, Massachusetts. And it's a former school. It's actually the former Clark School for the Deaf, which was at one of the first, if not the first, schools for the deaf in the country. But it's a big, beautiful campus. He spent several years and lots of money and resources to take this giant old school building and turn it into a world-class headquarters for a technology company. And it's funny because one of the things that we have, which I think we've talked about it a few times, is pickleball courts
Yes.
outside because my dad is a big fan of pickleball, but he also loves the idea of his employees having having pickleball games sometimes,
Yeah.
on lunch break or for company events or things like that. So it's funny at a time where a lot like the remote work became so popular and so ubiquitous and kind of cast as a much better alternative. He built this, and um, I think it's important to clarify that he didn't build it to say, "I want you to basically live here and have your family
Yeah.
suffer because you want to stay at work." It was more about, I want you to have a wonderful experience working here. I
Love it.
want it to be kind of like an enjoyable thing. That's always been a big thing for him. We work very hard at this company, but as you say, to kind of bring it full circle from that anecdote about the scooters, we work very hard, but my dad has always made sure that he created a culture where people laughed and had fun and enjoyed. There was a joy about being a Checkwriters employee, and so that's always been a very important piece of this company.
Yeah, no, I love it, and it's so authentic and genuine having encountered up close like I have. I mean, like it's not about like trust falls and like circling around and telling
Yeah.
each other what you're afraid of or whatever. Like it's just like it's natural, it's smooth, it's hand in glove, and I love encountering it when I do. Another thing that I know is central to Check Writer's story is your Western Massachusetts location. And having done a little bit of business myself in the Pioneer Valley and that area of New England, I know that it is a blessed place, a beautiful place. I met some of the best people I know there. My spiritual advisor is from there. But I also know that, there's some economic hardship. I know that there are some
Mhm.
challenges. I guess, put your Chamber of Commerce hat on, and be an advocate for your region here. Why is Western Massachusetts, Springfield, a great place to build a business? And your company, of course, could be located anywhere. Why is Checkwriters so committed to Springfield and Western Massachusetts?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question because um, there's a lot of directions I could go with that one. The first thing I'll say is, why are we based here? Just because this is where our family
Yeah.
is based, and we've been here for for some branches of our family for hundreds of years.
Yeah, love it.
Um, my dad's family came down from, they were French Canadians, and they came down, a few hundred years ago to work in the factories. And then my mom's family was here even much longer than that. So naturally, that's where you grow the company. A lot of the time, you hit a point where should the company, as it's growing and becoming a national player, should it move to a more friendly spot? That could be a more friendly spot for recruiting. We would maybe say, oh, let's move to Boston. We can recruit. There's a much bigger talent pool. We could say, let's move to a more tax-friendly state. There's a lot of things that you could say on that front. So I think my dad obviously made a decision where he said, no, we are going to stay and grow in this region, which, is um, it's a really important thing that kind of goes back to what I mentioned before about like you know, you're not that there can be an impression that you're not successful or going to make it big unless you leave the small town or you leave the region. And we clearly made a decision to stay in the region, and we are growing, and I don't think it hinders our growth whatsoever. I'm going to bring in an example that I love. I don't Have you heard of the founder Michele Ferrero, the Italian founder of Ferrero Rocher?
No, but it's a great name.
Oh yeah, isn't it? He was a devout Catholic and the founder of Ferrero Rocher, and he built this mega company. I mean, Ferrero Rocher. And actually, I didn't know this until I read a bit more about him, but he invented Kinder Joy, he invented Tic Tac, he
Hmm.
invented everything. His headquarters was in and is in still, to my knowledge, a very economically, um, I'll say depressed, but like a not a central region of Italy. Let's put it
Hmm.
that way.
Hmm.
And he kept that company there because in part because of his commitment when he took over the company from his father and uncle and grew it into this behemoth confectionery manufacturer, international corporation. It eventually became the wealthiest man in Italy. But he made a commitment to the his employees and specifically said, like, I will not rest until I will never be satisfied until this company creates for you and your family safety, security, and peace.
Wow.
And so part of his, if not all of his reason for keeping that company there is because of all the people who work there and depended
Yeah.
on it for their livelihood. So that's what I think about too, because especially with a family company, a private organization, your responsibility is much more long term and much more grounded in people than a public company, which needs to look at stock price, needs to look at short-term profits a lot of the time. So there's a big difference with that. As far as singing the praises of Western Mass was at one point one of the wealthiest and most productive areas of New England and potentially the country. The factories that were based here, Holyoke, which is 20 minutes south of where we are in Northampton, was a paper hub. Um, Paper, silk. It was one of my great aunts actually grew up there in the 1920s, and she talks about it as if it was like a New York City type of place. I mean, it was a beautiful city and thriving economic situation. Um, Another interesting thing is, we have the rivers. The Connecticut River is a significant opportunity, I think, for many different things. Development. They tried some things with hydropower. Obviously, that's how Holyoke was started. Um, and another thing is it's an education hub. We have the five college area right in Northampton. We have some that can be good, but it can also be not good depending on
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what your outlook on with society is.
Yeah.
But my point is there's a lot of good things that this region has going for it. And I think right now it's at every city has its ups and downs. I was talking with a guy a couple months ago, who was and he has owns one of the biggest buildings in Boston. And he was talking about Boston in the 1970s. He said it was a disaster.
Mm.
I didn't want to walk down this street. I think he got the building for a song because it's like, who wanted to be in downtown Boston? Now it's a much different story. So every region and every city has its ups and downs. But Western Massachusetts has a lot going for it. It's very conveniently located. Um, it's one of those things as we get more and more remote and technology based. I think there will be a swing where there's a desire for some of the more physical aspects of business, which might include friendly geography for certain things. Uh, one significant piece is home prices. Home prices are obviously they're still very high because it's New England, but they're much less in Western Massachusetts than they are in Boston. So I think it's one of those, it's a thing where you sometimes I don't know if one company or one forceful personality can do much for a specific region so much as the passage of time can, because it's going to be cyclical. So I guess I would say that like the Western Mass will rise again, and we'll see we'll see if we're here at that time.
Yeah, I like it. I'm with you
Yeah.
on that. So Dakota, let's just talk about you for a minute. Obviously you're the chief marketing officer at Checkwriters, and you've done such a great job, telling the story of your company and your family here. But for you personally, just talk to us a little bit about your faith journey, if you would. Obviously, that's part of who you are, and you're a practicing Catholic, and you got this great family, your wife and your six
Yep.
children. Has your Catholic faith always been a big part of your life?
So my family has always been Catholic. We have French and French Canadian and Irish heritage. So, both sets of my grandparents, obviously. And then I wouldn't say that it was a huge part that I really paid attention to growing up. Actually, not really much at all. But my parents did send me to Catholic high school, and that I'll say that the piece that got me reinterested or reinvigorated my faith is history, because I love history. I could talk a lot about, you got a little taste of it with me talking about, Western Mass and the history of our building. But that's what really reignited an interest in the Catholic faith for me and my Catholic faith, and kind of like became a pathway for me to be a much more faithful Catholic, I would say. But the biggest thing, which I have to say, but I would say it anyway because it's true, is my wife, because we met at college. We both went to Salve Regina University, which is a Catholic college. And I met her junior year, and then senior year we began dating. And she is from a big Irish Catholic family south of Boston. And so there's no option really to not be
That's great.
a devout Catholic. And I
Yeah.
remember senior year, she would say to me, well, very, very like nonchalantly, she would just say, well, you want to meet at Mass? I'm going to
Wow.
Mass. And she would just say, you're coming, right? And I would think, I guess there's no way I'm going to say no. That's not, and
Yeah.
that was always the case. And so it was a very slow process for me, in a good way, to become like I'll say like a full Catholic again, at that time. And I said earlier, regarding business and like your career path, like
Yeah.
your perspective changes when you become a parent. And for me, that was really the biggest thing, because you start to think, well, what sort of kids do I want to raise? And
Yeah.
obviously when you get married, and my wife and I were married at the chapel in at Salve Regina in Newport. And of course you make a promise to raise your children in the faith. And we had our first child almost exactly a year after we got married. So obviously, I'm thinking, well, that's what we said we would do, and so that became more and more of an important thing for me. So, at this point, I would say I would describe myself as devout just because, I do all the things that are required of us. But of course, also like anybody, like I have struggles with it. Um, not not struggles with my faith, but just you know, the things that impact all of us. Um, and and I think another great thing that it does for me, you talked about, was ever a point where you thought you wouldn't work for the business? I would say that point where I thought I might not was probably when I had the weakest faith. And as the faith grew, I realized more and more that it was almost like a duty and a responsibility that I had to work at the company. And those things kind of like travel along the same path. Because I do view it almost as like fatherhood is a vocation and marriage is a vocation. I also think of if you have a family organization or a family business, it can be a form of a vocation
Yes.
to embrace that. And so I think for me, that's where things really came together, at the same time.
Yeah, I love your message around duty and responsibility. You mentioned that several times, Dakota, and that just clearly is a big part of who you are. Um, Talk to us a little bit about how you organize your life. We're very interested in that in the Faith and Finance Forum. Many of our guests,
Mhm.
like you, are busy corporate executives who also have families and a lot going on. How do you balance your significant responsibilities to check writers with your duty as a father of six and a husband and the various other commitments you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned a few times, we're a very family-friendly company. So I never feel that there is a choice I have to make, I suppose. But things come up. I'm very blessed to be able to have my wife in many ways, but also she's home with the kids. And that's much harder than my job. But it's a great thing to be able to have that because she can manage and pick up a lot of the slack with that. But of course, there's things that you have to manage. So with me, we have we have the business piece of it, and then my wife on the home front. But of course, I mean, going to mass every Sunday is never an option. There's a lot of things that they have. My kids go to a little Catholic school. When I say never an option, I mean never an option to not go. I
Right,
didn't mean
right.
that.
Yeah, I get
But
it.
uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, my kids go to a little Catholic school, just 15 minutes from my office.
yeah.
So if there's a pinch, I can pick them up anytime. So there's a lot of good things around that. Another pretty convenient thing is that my kid's school is also a client of Checkwriters, so
Nice.
I could. So it's funny. There's so much, for better or worse. There's just a lot of blending, which is a good thing because that is really what a community ought to be, right? And a family business ought to prioritize.
Yeah, it
But
just, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but it just sounds
yeah,
very old.
absolutely.
It sounds like very old school, it just sounds
Yeah,
very intertwined where it's like, the school, the family, the business, the community
yep,
activities, everything's kind of connected. Everybody knows each other, everybody gets each other, and it's just very
yeah.
close and proximate. I love it.
Absolutely, there is a lot of that, and then I also serve on the board of our kids' school, which is it's not a terrible commitment. I don't want to paint a picture that it's somehow like just perfectly easy and everything's great,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there is a piece that comes with it, and I've always you know that's what people say about my dad. Actually, he like there's growing a business is not an easy thing, but I can't ever say that he was like angry or about like business things or like stress about business things
Amazing.
beyond what would normally be expected, which is unusual maybe, but I think that can be a common thing if you have your priorities aligned. But
Yeah.
it's just not the same thing that you see with a lot of like corporate mentality. It's like people
No,
always
yeah, yeah.
stressed, people
Yeah.
always busy, people
Yep.
like, oh, my schedule is so packed, and it's like I don't know if it has to be,
Yeah, I love it.
So
Yep.
yeah, that's kind of what I think about that.
No, I think that's well said. And like I don't know if you feel the same way, but it seems to me like temperament and the ability just to like, stay cool and balanced and level despite like a lot of intake and a lot of responsibilities coming your way, both the ones that you steward, Dakota, and certainly your parents stewarded when they were founding the company, the ability to go through all that with a sense of just like calm and control, that's a real gift, and it's probably an essential component of a leader's character. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. I one of the episodes you did maybe a couple years ago with Dr. Abella,
Yeah, yeah,
about his book Super Habits. That's what I was thinking about when you said that, because that's to grow in those virtues, and especially ones around like I'm thinking of like restraint and humility
yes.
and being able to moderate your temperament despite so many moving parts of business and family life and all of those things. Um, that's that's one that is hugely important. And he actually we hosted him at our office last month, or
Wow.
maybe a couple months ago, and he did a workshop for our employees around
Oh
that
my
same
gosh.
thing. I think he does it for leadership
Yeah,
teams a lot, but he did it for our employees because, again, I mean, it's I look at it as those types of things were very important in growing the business, and then more and
yes.
more important as the business grows and gets bigger. And you want to be able to create a peaceful and virtuous atmosphere for your clients, just as much, or not for your clients, of course, too, but for your people, for the people who are driving the business and working at the business, and for your team. And if everybody kind of is aligned around those basic things, basic virtues, then you're going to have a much more positive experience.
Oh wow. I didn't know that he had visited your office. I bet Dr. Abella really enjoyed being there, and I'm sure the benefit was mutual. I bet he learned a lot from you too. That's great. Wow. Do you think your kids will work in the company, Dakota?
I try to, and I do. I bring them in. I involve them in things. I don't try to like shield them from the pieces of business, and especially for me, the biggest thing I learned is just like the responsibility, and like I keep bringing up that word stewardship,
Yeah.
um, which can be a very small thing. It's one of those things, like I remember when I was a kid, it was my dad would walk in and he would say, "Oh, there's like a piece of paper on the floor, a scrap of paper, like pick it up. We got to pick
Yeah.
that. No trash outside, nothing on the floor inside." Those type of things. I try to make sure that I communicate those same things to my kids. But of course, I would love that. I want to make sure that the company grows and lasts, not just for our growing family, but for the growing families of our employees too.
Okay, and the last thing I want to ask about Checkwriters, and I want to, wrap up with some other personal stuff, but just describe to us the scope of your business. Is there any limitation whatsoever on the type of organization you can serve? Just for our listeners that are encountering this conversation and want to, perhaps talk to Checkwriters about working together. Just talk to us a little bit about, who you serve, how to get in contact with you, just connect those dots.
Sure. So we have clients in all 50 states.
Wow.
and a few U.S. territories. So there's no limitation on that whatsoever. It's just we're not an international company, but we are a national company. Very familiar with multi-state tax requirements, all that sort of thing. And generally, our sweet spot is anywhere from, I mean, we have clients with one employee and we have clients with 2,000 employees, but
Wow.
anywhere in that range is really where we find that we can support these businesses or organizations in the best way possible. We have our, like I mentioned, our proprietary software product, which of course is also called Checkwriters, and we have our own in-house development team of about 15 developers based right here in Northampton who design and develop that software. I think the most important thing that I think about and that I like to communicate is that our mission here is to really provide the best payroll and HR experience of any vendor. And the form that takes is providing just exceptional, responsible service. We always, ensure that folks can get in touch with us. It's not outsourced to some call center, but you're dealing with people who are in this building. We're all based in this building, and we want to provide that premium personal service paired with that premium beautiful product that is enjoyable to use, that isn't just some sort of utilitarian payment process, but something that has the human element in both the service and the software that is, integral to making sure that you provide a good payroll experience for your employees. Our website, checkwriters.com, pretty self-explanatory. One of our biggest niche markets is nonprofits and education. And of course, that pairs very well, John, with the DFFC conference, working with several dioceses around the country. The Diocese of Springfield was one of our first clients, and they still are. And that's kind of what we focus on. So we really want to make sure that our clients have a beautiful and first class experience with us so that then they can pass that same payroll experience on to their employees.
Wow. I mean, just again, just such a cool story, in just a few decades from the kitchen table in Western Massachusetts to
Yeah.
doing business from Maine to Hawaii and beyond. I mean, it's just
Yeah, yeah.
what an amazing tale. Well, as we just have a few more minutes together, I want to tap into our shared love of history, which you and I have in common. Any historic figure that is just kind of like your guy or your gal, like this is the person who I can't get enough reading about, learn more about. I mean, who's your top person?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, the answer to that changes depending on like what I'm reading. So I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you what, because there's just so many great things you can get from history, so many great like historical figures to draw on. But right now I'm reading a biography of Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah.
And I actually first heard of him. What obviously I've always known of him, but I first got interested in his life and his story and his philosophy through this podcast that I love called Founders, if you've heard of that. But he was
Yes.
profiled
Yes.
on that, and then I went and bought the book, which is a 900-page book, which is pretty. I think I'm at maybe I'm at page 400 in that book,
Yeah. That's a
but
heavy book.
oh yeah, it's unbelievable. I
I
mean,
love it.
and yeah, and De Gaulle, like his personality it's just so fascinating. And I feel like we don't hear enough about him because the focus is so much on Roosevelt and Churchill at that time,
Yes.
which
Yes.
funnily enough, they weren't fans of his. And I thought, I gotta learn about why that is. That's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting thing
Yeah.
that like these two figures who were supposed to be, are so lauded with our Western history did not like this other guy who from what I see is a pretty amazing figure in his own right. And I love this. And of course, De Gaulle was a devout Catholic, and there's so
Yes.
many cool things about him. I know I love the Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. And when I learned that De Gaulle kept a copy of that in his pocket and read it
Yeah.
regularly, I was like, that sounds like a guy I gotta learn more
Yeah.
about. Yeah, and then of course he had a daughter with Down syndrome,
Yep.
and people would describe, he was a very stoic man, a very stoic leader, and very emotionless and a lot of and off, kind of off-putting, like not somebody you'd want to like have dinner
Yeah.
with, you know.
Yeah.
But people would describe when they would maybe stumble upon him in a situation where he wasn't expecting like a visitor, and he would be with her, like singing to her, or talking with her, or telling her stories. And it was just like a beautiful thing to see that like sort of like fatherly sort of figure who then became like such almost like a father of France. So that's my guy right now, De Gaulle.
Yeah, yeah, no, De Gaulle was amazing. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. And but for De Gaulle, like where would France be? I mean, he really kept that
absolutely.
fire lit during his nation's darkest times. And
Yep.
yeah, a true man of principle. And yeah, fascinating guy. I'm impressed you went there. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Your personal values and principles, like, what are a couple of those? What do you want to be known for? What are the what are the real foundation of who you are, your values and principles. What would one or two of those be?
Yeah, that's a big question. There's a lot of ways I could answer it. And I'm pretty young, relatively speaking, so I don't know if this will be this answer might change, but I think right now, like what we touched on, I think it's very important, especially in you know, our American society is so geared toward the individual. I
Yeah,
think it's very important that folks know that it's okay to say, not what do I want to be when I grow up, but what should I be when I
yeah,
grow up?
yeah.
And I think for me, that's where that was kind of my realization that what should I be? I ought to
Yeah.
take on this mantle with my family company, this thing that my parents built, and ensure that it lasts to the next generation and the next, and supports people who work here, not just my own family. So I think people ought to be able to think that. And you have to say that to your kids. Like, we say, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like it's like this constant like knee-jerk thing that parents say, grandparents say, what are you going to be? And it's like, what do they go? Oh, I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. And it's like, well, should you be that?
Right,
Or is there
right.
something else that you ought to be?
Yeah.
And of course, what
Vocation. Yeah,
vocation, and
yeah.
what does God expect of you? What
Thank you.
does God
Yes.
want you to be? And so that's what I think about. That's what I would like to get out into the world. And a lot of that is wrapped up in the idea of family business and family organization, because you see family businesses that, oh, what's going on? Oh, I'm selling it, or I'm
Yep.
going to wind it down because my kid went off to
Mm.
wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it can be a sad thing because we can talk about too, like regional decline.
Mm-hmm.
That was not something that people did, because you 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 were leaving the place where you could have made an impact.
Yes.
So that's my answer for that this time in my life right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It could evolve. Yeah. And then lastly, who is your hero and why?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like cliche and corny, but my dad has been like such like a present figure in my life through all the things, and growing the business, and my going on sales calls early with him, and then and being involved in so many different pieces. So absolutely, I would say that he's my hero.
Is there any significance to your first name?
I was wondering if you would ask me that. And speaking of my dad, he has this story that I don't think is true, but what's the Italian phrase? Even if it's not true, it's still a good story. But he says that his ancestors in Canada are part Blackfoot Indian.
Nice.
And of course, Dakota's a Native American name, but other than that, we don't have much connection. Other than that potential Blackfoot connection at some point when they came over in the 1600s from France, I don't have I don't have any crazy story about my first name.
Well, I love it. Well, listen, my friend, we're out of time, which is unfortunate because I feel like we could go much longer. But we've been on with Dakota Hebert, the Chief Marketing Officer at Checkwriters. a phenomenal company that's serving the Catholic Church and other organizations very well in all 50 states, coast to coast and beyond. Dakota is a practicing Catholic and a family man and a community member, and just a lot of depth, a lot of layers we've explored here. Dakota, I think you're taking a social media break right now, but folks they can find you at the Checkwriters website, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I am. Yes.
Thanks for your time, brother. God bless you. Be
All
well.
right. Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate it. God bless also.